Hi, my name is Andrew and welcome to How To Basic, a series from English Lodge dedicated to helping you improve your business English. In this video, I explain to you the basics of writing a professional business English email. And the starting point for this is to talk about modern business culture in the English-speaking world. Now this, today, comes from America. And the Americans, they believe that good business is about creating relationships between people and creating families of businesses. And here, they don't believe in being formal, they believe in being informal. Now, in many business cultures in many other countries, we like to be formal. We like to use people's titles of doctor or mister, and we like to use very formal language. But in American business culture, we don't do this. It's about being friendly, about being personal, about making a connection. Okay? And this is reflected in how we write an email. Okay, so we now have this idea that a business relationship should be friendly and informal. It's about building a connection between myself and my business partners. So how is this reflected in an email? How do we write the email to show that we're being more friendly? Well, the starting point here is to forget about the old style of letter writing. Many people often take this old style and they put it into email writing. And so you find people writing an email that says something like, "Dear Sir, Madam, with regard to your email dated," etc., etc., etc. And this sounds old-fashioned and it's not very friendly. And therefore it doesn't sound very professional in the modern idea of what professional actually is. Okay? So how do we start an email? Well, we can still use dear if we want to, and maybe we could use dear Mr. and then the surname, so dear Mr. Smith. But for a woman, we don't use Mrs. anymore, M-R-S, and we don't use Miss, M-I-S-S. These two titles, they tell us if the woman is married or unmarried. And well, this just is not important for modern business. And so instead, we replace both of these with M-S. And this is pronounced Ms. So we could write Dear Mr. Smith or Dear Ms. Smith. But again, this is a little bit too formal. However, if you come from a very formal culture or a very formal business culture, then it's possible that you just won't feel happy writing Dear John or Dear Jill. Especially if this is the very first email you've ever written to this person. And so, if that makes you feel more comfortable, then go ahead and use it. It's not a big error. Okay? However, if you write a lot with native speakers, you will have seen that they use many things other than dear. And so we will get Dear John, Hello John, or even Hi John. All of these things in a business email. And all of these things are absolutely okay. There's nothing wrong with using these in a business email. Okay? There is one very important rule here, though. And this is that if you write for the first time, Dear Mr. Smith, and they write back, Dear John, then you can't reply to them with Dear Mr. Smith. You would have to reply with Dear Jack, or whatever their first name is. Okay? The rule here is that as the native speakers go down these levels of formality, you have to reflect this, okay? And so the highest level is Dear Mr. or Dear Ms. And then the next level is Dear plus the first name, so Dear John. And then the next level is Hello John. And the next level down is Hi John, okay? We can always go down these levels of formality, but we cannot go back up, okay? Good. Now, we've written our beginning, Dear Mr. or Hi John, whatever that might be. And after the name, we put a comma. And then we drop down 2 lines. So we have 1 line which is a space, and then we go down to the next line and we start the main body of the email. And this starts with something like, so, Hi John, can you do the following for me, please? Okay. Now here, the can, in this case, the C on the can is a big C, not a small c. And yes, I know we have a big letter here for Dear John, and then we've got a comma, so there's no full stop. So why am I putting a big letter here and not a small letter? Well, that's just convention. It's just what we do. We did this when we were letter writing, and so it's come over into email writing as well. Okay? Now, another useful thing here is you notice that that sentence I gave you is really quite direct. So it was, Hi John, can you do the following for me, please? And at the end of this, it's not a full stop, it's a colon. It's 2 dots, okay? And then after that, I can put bullet points. So, can you do the following for me, please? Colon, 2 dots. Look at the figures from last month. Check your emails from yesterday. Boom, 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 boom. And I can bullet point. And there are a number of reasons for doing this. The first reason for doing this is that we don't have a large block of text that we have to look through to find out what you want. Now, some people think that this is not very polite, that in fact it's impolite to write like this. In many cultures, it's far more polite to put in long sentences and make the thing a proper text and not just a list. But we get so many emails in business English that the bit that we like is that it's clear. And this is really helpful for the person who gets it. We always like, in English business, a clear email. But there's another, more important reason to make the sentences short. English is what's called a stress-timed language. And if you want to really understand what that actually is, then there's a link to another video below. But the important thing here is to know that the longer your sentence is, the more commas you'll need. And the more commas you put into the sentence, the easier it is for the people reading that sentence to misunderstand what you want to say. It's one of the problems with the structure of English. And so here is a good rule. Keep all your sentences short, and where you can, put bullet points in. Okay? Now, just starting an email with, Hi John, can you do the following for me, please? And then a list. That could seem not very polite. Okay? And so sometimes you will find the native speakers, they will put something between these 2 lines. And they'll write, Hi John, hope you had a good weekend. Or, hope you have a good weekend if it's near the end of the week. Or, I hope you are well. Okay? Now this can be a bit tricky for non-native speakers. Why are you putting that in? Do you actually want to know if I'm well or not well, or if I had a good weekend, or what I did? Well, the answer is no. I don't want to know anything about that. So why is it in? Well, think of this as an electronic handshake. It's just a way of being polite inside an email. Okay? We're shaking hands. We're saying, how do you do? And the response from you is something like, so the person writes to you, hope you had a good weekend, and you can write back, hope you had a good weekend too. If they write, I hope you are well, then you write back with, I hope you are well too. Okay? And that's you shaking hands back. And that's all we're doing here. Now, the next thing to think about is after we've written our email, we need to check. We need to check that we haven't made any spelling mistakes in there and that we haven't made any mistakes with our grammar. And so it's a very good idea to turn the spell checker on our email program over to English. But you need to check which English you are using. We have UK English, which is the one that I speak. We have US English, which is the other main one. And so generally in business English, we find that US English is the one that most people use. The next one, which is again an international standard, is UK English. But after that, there are many other Englishes which are spoken. There's Canadian English, Australian English, New Zealand English, Indian English, South African English, Jamaican English. And some of them are just a little bit different and others are very different. Okay? So, check to see which one you put onto your spell checker. And it should be either US English or UK English. But then the question is, how do you know which is which? Well, let me ask you a question, just a quick one. How do you spell colour? Do you spell it C-O-L-O-R or do you spell it C-O-L-O-U-R? If you don't use the U, then that's American English or US English. If you do have the U in there, then that's UK English. Okay? So no U, US English, with a U, UK English. And pick one of these two. However, even with the spell checker on, we do need to be a bit careful. We can't just think, oh, well, the spell checker's on, everything's fine. We do need to read through and check our email is correct. Now, maybe this has happened to you in your own language. You write a business email and you send it and it comes back the next day with a reply and you read your original email and you see lots of mistakes in it that you didn't see the day before when you checked it. And the question here is, well, why didn't I see them? And the answer to this is that humans, we all have a short-term memory. And often when we're reading the email, we're only half reading it and we're half remembering. So there are two techniques to get round this little problem. The first technique is maybe write another email before sending the first one, or go to a meeting and come back again, and then read through the email once you have forgotten what you wrote. If you don't have time to do this, the other option is to start at the bottom of the email and read the last sentence first, and then go up and read the next sentence, and then the next, and the next, and the next. And because it's out of order, this means we're not using our short-term memory, we're looking at each sentence on its own. And we stand a better chance of getting it correct. Okay, so we've talked about how we begin an email, starting with the most formal, which is Dear Mr. Smith or Dear Ms. Smith, going to Dear John or Dear Jill, then down to Hello John or Hello Jill, and then finally to Hi John or Hi Jill. And the idea that we must always reflect the formality in a downwards direction. We must always go towards being more informal than more formal. We've talked about the idea of this electronic handshake at the beginning of an email, which we sometimes find. And this is the hope you had a good weekend, hope you have a good weekend. And the response is hope you had a good weekend too, shaking your hands back again, or hope you have a good weekend too. Okay? We talked about the idea of keeping sentences short because there's less chance of misunderstanding. We also talked about this idea of making bullet points and lists of items, again because it's very, very clear and it's easy to understand. We also talked about how we check our emails. The idea of either walking away for a bit and then coming back and looking, or reading from the bottom to the top. And of course, naturally making sure that we have the right spell checker on, either the UK English or the US English. But of course, the question here now, or the last one to answer, is how do we end an email? Well, again, going back to this idea of the old-fashioned letter, we cannot use yours faithfully or yours sincerely anymore. This just doesn't work anymore with a modern business English email. So what can we use? Well, we can use best regards or regards. These are the two that you generally see the most. You quite often also see kind regards. But best regards and regards are the two that we see the most often. Sometimes a native speaker might write back and at the bottom they put BR in big letters. And of course this stands for best regards. And it doesn't matter how you started your email. If you started it with Dear Mr. Smith or you started it with Hi Jill, you can use either best regards or just regards at the end. But there is one other thing that we do see sometimes from native speakers. And this is when they think that they have a very good relationship with you, that they have almost like a personal friendship with you. And at this point, they will often use cheers. Now, most of us, we know cheers from, when you've got a drink and you clink glasses and you say, cheers. Yeah? But it can also mean thank you, and it can also be a nice way of saying goodbye as well. And so in this context of thank you or goodbye, that's how they are using it, cheers. Should you use this, or do you need to use this? Well, no. Unlike the beginning of the email where we always drop down these formality levels, we don't need to do this here. But if you often sign with best regards, then you might want to go down to regards if your business partner always uses cheers. But you don't have to use it if you don't feel comfortable with it. Okay? Now, there is one last thing to talk about when writing a professional business English email, and that is the style of language that we use in the main text. If we think about a traditional letter, then it's very, very formal. With regard to your email dated the 14th of the 5th, well, no, we wouldn't use that in a modern business English email. With regard to is replaced with about. So all we have to do there is write about your email from 14/5. Okay? At the end of this video, I will give you a list of some of the old phrases and what they are now replaced with. As an example, the one I gave just now, with regard to your email, is replaced with about. So you'll find that at the end of this video. You can also find at the end of this video an email. And here I give you the different options for how you can start it, some of the ideas for electronic handshakes, different ways of setting out the email and different ways of ending it. Okay? you've enjoyed watching this video, then why not check out my free review site and my on-demand site, which you'll find in the links below. And please don't forget to comment, rate and subscribe, and I'll see you next time on English Lodge.